All right, let's jump right in. Anyone who's ever dabbled in automated software testing knows the feeling, right? Things can get messy, and I mean fast. You've got these test scripts that work like a charm 1 minute, and the next, they're just this tangled, impossible to maintain nightmare. So today, we're going to unpack a design pattern that's basically a blueprint for bringing some serious order to all that chaos. So think about your own projects for a minute. I bet this sounds familiar. You spend all this time writing a whole suite of tests. They're running perfectly, and then boom, some tiny little change to the user interface breaks, well, everything. If you're sitting there nodding along right now, trust me, you are not alone. This is like the textbook definition of fragile test code. And, you know, this kind of fragility, it leads to some major frustrations. Your code is brittle, right? A developer changes one little ID on a button, and suddenly half your tests are failing. It's almost impossible for a new person to read because the what the test is doing is totally buried in the how it's doing it. And oh man, the copy pasting, you find yourself just copying and pasting the same chunks of code everywhere. This is exactly what happens when you mix up your test logic with your element locators. But what if there was a better way? A kind of blueprint to avoid all that pain? A proven, industry-standard method for organizing your test code? Well, good news, there is. It's called the Page Object Model, or POM for short. And honestly, it's a really elegant solution to this exact problem. So what is it exactly? Well, at its core, the page object model is a design pattern, and the main idea is actually super simple. For every single web page in your application, the login page, the dashboard, the user settings page, whatever, you create a matching class in your code. And that class, it becomes the one and only source of truth for everything on that page. I'm a big fan of analogies, so here's one for you. Think of your test code without POM. It's like that messy junk drawer everyone has in their kitchen. You know the one. Everything's just thrown in there. Screwdrivers, old batteries, random keys. You can never find what you're looking for. Well, the page object model basically takes that junk drawer and turns it into a perfectly organized toolbox, where every single tool has its own dedicated spot. And that comparison really nails the heart of this whole shift in thinking. The old way just jumbles everything together. Your test script is trying to find elements on the page and perform actions and verify the results, all inside one massive, messy file. The POM way? It creates this beautiful, clean separation. The page classes know about themselves. They know their own elements and the actions you can perform on them. And your tests, they just use those pages. Simple as that. Okay, so let's pop the hood for a second and actually look inside one of these page classes. What's really in there? It pretty much boils down to two key ingredients that work together just perfectly. First up, you've got your locators. Think of these as the addresses for all the interactive bits and pieces on that web page. The username field, the password box, the login button. And second, you've got the actions. These are the methods that actually do stuff with those elements, like typing text into a field or clicking on a button. All right, let's talk about the first ingredient, locators. In the page object model, there's this really clean way to define them using something called the @findBy annotation. It's just a simple declarative way to tell Selenium, hey, see this variable? It points to that specific element on the page. And this is a huge win for efficiency. I mean, without @findBy, you'd be typing out driver.findElement over and over and over again. But with @findBy, you just declare the element one time, right at the top of the class, give it a nice clear name, and that's it, you're done. It makes your code instantly easier to read and way less repetitive. Okay, so we've found our elements. Now we actually need to do something with them. And that's where ingredient number 2 comes in, the actions. These are basically just simple, reusable methods that live inside our page class. So we can make one method to type in a username, another one for the password, and a third one to click that login button. Now this is where it gets really powerful. We can start combining these smaller actions into a bigger, more meaningful user workflow. For instance, we could create a single login method, and all that method does is call the other little methods, the one for entering the username, the one for the password, and the one for clicking the button. It bundles it all up into one complete user action. Now, hold on. There's one really crucial piece of the puzzle that makes all this @findBy magic actually work. It's this one line of code, PageFactory.init elements. You just stick this inside the constructor of your page class, and it's like the magic glue. It tells Selenium to scan through the class and fire up all those elements you declared with @findBy. If you forget this line, well, nothing happens. So, okay, we've defined our page elements with that find by, we've built our action methods. So what does our actual test script look like now? Honestly, this is the best part. This is that aha moment where you really see the big payoff for setting all this up. Just look at that. It's so clean. It's beautiful, right? The actual test code is now just 2 lines. Seriously. First, we create a new instance of our login page object, and then we just call that high-level login method we made and pass in the username and password. That's it. The whole test. See, here's the key thing. All that messy complexity, finding the elements, interacting with them, it's all neatly tucked away or encapsulated inside that login page class. So you're a test script. It now reads like a simple set of instructions that a human can actually understand. Anybody on your team, even someone non-technical, could look at this and get exactly what the test is trying to do. All right, let's zoom out and talk about the huge long-term win here. Remember how we started this talking about that brittle, frustrating code? Well, how exactly does POM solve that? And why does this matter so much for you and your team like 6 months down the road? Well, this whole approach really pays off in 3 big ways. First, the code becomes incredibly readable, which we just saw. Second, it's super reusable. I mean, that same login page class can be used by dozens of different tests that all need to log in first. And third, and maybe most importantly, it becomes so much easier to maintain. And here it is, the killer feature for maintainability. Just imagine this. The UI developers decide to change the ID for the username field. In the old, messy world, you might have to hunt that ID down and change it in 10, 20, maybe even 50 different test files. It's a nightmare. But with POM, you go to one single place, loginpage.java, update that one app find by locator, and boom, one tiny change, and every single one of your tests is fixed. That's a game changer. Okay, so if you're going to walk away from this explainer remembering just one thing, what should it be? Let's boil this whole entire concept down to its absolute core idea. Here it is. The page object model is all about creating a clean separation of concerns. It separates the what from the how. The what is, what's on the page, its elements, its actions. That all lives in the page class. And the how is how you're using that page to test something specific. That lives in the test class. This simple separation, that is the secret sauce for creating test code that's readable, reusable, and, at long last, maintainable. And that just leaves us with one final thought. Sure, the page object model is a design pattern for test automation, but the principle behind it, that separation of concerns, is totally universal. So the real question to leave you with is this. Where else in your projects could applying a clear design pattern like this transform a whole lot of chaos into some beautiful clarity?